My name is Betty Slade. We're at the Westport Public Library in the Manton Room. Today we will be talking about the Westport Historical Society program that has been developed over the last 2 years, unfurling the women of Westport Point. A couple of years ago, Jenny O'Neill, who's the executive director of the Westport Historical Society, approached me with a plan to do studies of the women of Westport Point. The reason that she wanted to do that is because she was aware that there have been so many women from Westport Point who were quite remarkable. And the whole concept of why these people ended up at Westport Point, or were they born at Westport Point, what did they do, etc. So we went back really to the 1800s. We were able to get data, information on some of the people who lived here at that time, but most of the people are in the 1900s. So in the late 1800s, somehow or another, Westport Point got discovered. A lot of it had to do with Horseneck Beach. People wanted to come down here for that purpose. And then once the first group started coming, they invited friends, friends invited friends, until we come to today, where this is still happening. And of course, as I said, a lot of the attraction was Horseneck Beach. But the other was the beauty of the point, the interesting historic houses, etc., which to this day have been protected because of the making the Westport Point a historic district by in about 1974. So that's where we're going from, starting from now. We'll talk about some of the people, some of the areas in which they excelled, and introduce you to some individuals. So this is an interesting point that we wanted to emphasize. History is generally of the men, and the women are often not included in the stories. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to do this particular study. So, as I mentioned earlier, Westport Point really was discovered in the 1890s by 3 families who came in. The Hall family, which still has relatives here, the Sheldon family, and the Southern family. Then the Fitches came in about that time also, and other families, including people who were the heads of private schools, artists, people from Providence, New York, Chicago, and so on. So what we're doing here is actually picking out some of these. There are a lot more women we could have looked at, and you can find the information on the Westport Historical Society website about each one of these women. But I do recommend, if you get this in time, that you come and see this exhibit at the library. So as we said, we're unfurling the lives of some women who lived in Westport Point. And I'm just going to choose a couple here and there, not because they're much more special than the others, but because people know them from their writings. So this exhibit here of Janet Grinley, that's actually Janet Gillespie. Janet Gillespie married after her husband died. That's why the name Grinley is there. But most of you have heard about her book, The Joyful Noise. Janet was from the Hall family. The Hall families came in the late 1890s. They built a house at the point called Sinton. The families grew up there, and their descendants married. The people they married started coming to Westport with them. Their children remain here, and great-grandchildren are still here in Westport Point. But Janet actually does a a book about the joy of doing a bird, just going straight across the property, looking at birds, talking about what was happening at the time, and it is very joyful. She wrote other books too, which you will see with a Merry Heart, Bedlam in the Back Seat, coming to Westport from New York, how hard it was, etc. So that's her story. Charlotte Fitch was an actress. She lived here most of her life. She started coming as a very young woman to Westport Point, and she became a full professor in 1976 at Smith, but always came down here and lived to be over 100. She's been interviewed several times. Those interviews are available at the Westport Historical Society website. Here we have a picture of young women, local women generally, who have ancestors, who have descendants here in Westport still. This shows you how important the beach was to this community, Horseneck Beach. But a lot of these had ancestors who were whalers. Whalers were the first, really, the people who came to Westport to whale or lived in Westport and became whalers, the old timers, the Manchesters, etc. So we have that history of whaling and their descendants, and then we have the history of people who came to Westport because it was such a beautiful place. This is an example. I believe this house has been torn down. I don't think it's still there, but not sure, of some women at Westport Point. I don't know if they were local women or visitors, but they do look like they were having a pretty good time. So I wanted to point these people out because Norma Judson and Glenda Broadbent were definitely historians. Of course, Glenda was older than Norma, but she was Tabor. Her father, Andrew Tabor, built a lot of houses in Westport and was quite well known. And she had 3 sisters. But she was a teacher for about 41 years in Westport. But she also wrote books about the Westport Point Methodist Church and other topics, and kept detailed history for the town. Some of the people that we see associated with her are listed here. Alice Esser was a Black woman. They came from Providence, and they had a restaurant very near what was Hotel Westport in the early 1920s, 1900s. And they had that for several years. Mary Soul is a local person. Catherine Hall, we've mentioned. The Delanos, Sue Van Sloan. So these were the women who had businesses, and these were the women who were historians. Norma Judson is very special in my eyes. Norma was a mentor to me in the very early years when I moved to Westport. And she started a history study group. I'm telling you about this because the history study group had all the old timers in it. And she would ask them questions, or she would give us assignments, and we had to follow up on those assignments and report them. And so early on, she invited me to come. I was new, but she invited me to come, and I suggested that we record all of these meetings from that time on, which we did. And they also are available at the Historical Society website. I really recommend that you take a look at this. Norma had a business very young. Her father was a businessman over on Cherry and Webb, and she had a business there. And then she had Silas Brown, which was across the street, across the parking lot from what is now Lee's Market. But I think her main contribution was saving buildings. She, along with Pete Baker, who did not live at the Point, but who is very important in this, saved many houses. They also saved the Wolf Pit School. They worked on the Bell School and the Milton Earl School, which is now our town annex. So I think she's so significant in recording the history of Westport. I did want, Westport Point in particular, I did want to mention her. The Allen family up here is in front of a house that actually burned down. I've been told a lot about it by Russ Hart. Russ Hart is an Allen, a descendant. All of these are Allen families. I live in an Allen house. A lot of people live in Allen houses because they were such a large family. But this is extraordinary that we have this 1895 photo of that family. We know who they all are also. Believe it or not, before 1854, women weren't allowed to teach in schools. And even after that, if they married, they could not continue to teach. So this was kind of important. There are women who did start small schools. Over there, we have a list of them that we might show in a little while. But another quite remarkable woman was Jessie Luther. She was very close to another woman named Clara Buffum. Clara Buffum did some incredible bookbinding. She became quite famous for her bookbinding. They built a house together in Cape Bile Lane, which is still standing and protected. But she started working with Grenfell in Newfoundland, bringing occupational therapy to Providence Hospital in Providence. You can see in this photo that she actually went up there, learned a great deal about this, came back, and she had her summer house actually at the point. So that's another thing, is that a lot of these women just had summer homes here. And then many of them ended up living in those summer homes later on. So she is an example of one of those. So Kate Corey Grinnell lived 1850 to 1939. There is the famous Kate Corey whaler that was built at the point about 1856. It was built by an Allen and her father, Alexander Corey. This is important. This ship was important because it was a whaler and it was built in Westport, but also it was destroyed by the Confederate ship Alabama during the Civil War. And the Alabama was quite a famous ship for the amount of destructions that it made of boats. The family, the Corey family, still live in that house that you'll see at 2029 Main Road, which is, they married into the Grinnell family, the Grinnells, but it continued to have a Corey through there, of course, as descendants. So that house is still occupied by the Corey family. So this painting is done by Stobart, who also retired at Westport off Drift Road. He's no longer with us. So the painting is quite famous. The ship is quite famous, and the family is still in Westport, the Corey family. You can see the lovely French name of Madame Chardon. The Chardons were important in Westport because they were part of a music community, along with the Ring family, R-I-N-G family. And they each summer would have a music camp, bring all the various families together and perform music. So their son married Phoebe Ashley. Ashley was Phoebe was the daughter of Clifford Ashley, the very famous man who wrote the Book of Knots, K-N-O-T-S, and who was an incredible artist. Phoebe lived until very recently it was originally the wood farm close to the point, and it's still in conservation. They're protecting that property. But the music element in Westport Point was a very great attraction to many other people. Probably because of the beauty of Westport Point, especially in the early years, the fact that the old houses remain from 1700s, 1776 to now 1840 or 50 are still standing and protected. The gardens, the river, all of this attracted artists in particular. This is a group of artists in later years. Probably this might have been the 50s or 60s. And down here are some write-ups about people who were in Westport Point who became well known for their artwork, coming from all different places. This woman, Blanche Paul, her descendants are the Carters. She was one of the original Westport art group founders, and she brought in people, the Wings, the Yeomans, Madame Chardon, the Dr. French, her grandchildren, and these people, a lot of them remained here in Westport. The Bakers were very famous in town. They owned a lot of land, owned a beautiful home at the Point. And she published books, and her poetry was very well known, and she was actually an inventor also. So this is an example of some of the artisans and craftsmen. We have other examples, which, as I mentioned earlier, can be found, the write-ups can be found on the Westport Historical website if you want to go further into looking at some of these women. We have a very unusual, a person with an unusual history, Marjorie Newell Robb. Marjorie joined the Mayflower, not the Mayflower, joined the Titanic, and she survived its sinking. In her final 4 decades, she moved to Westport Point. She was interviewed many, many times in her final years, in her 80s. Before that, she wasn't really feeling like she could do presentations. And she said, maybe a message to be gained from the tragedy is the unsinkable ship, all the money that those men had that was of no use to them at all. Absolutely a good philosophy, but she was well known. The other person who we all know about today is Helen Ellis. Helen Ellis set up a foundation, and every year, money from that foundation is granted to people for cultural activities in Westport. Many of us have received those grants in all aspects of culture, dance, history, bird watching. All of these things have benefited from Helen Ellis. So this story is of women who were born in Westport, raised in Westport, and did great things while they was here. They all have gained reputations through the years, and I do recommend very strongly that you take a look at their write-ups on the Westport Historical Society website. I would like to also note, you've seen how beautifully this presentation is done on these walls. Of course, the person who's behind this is Jenny O'Neill at the Historical Society, but Ray Shaw, a volunteer, has one exhibit after another has shown his incredible capability and understanding of what was trying to be gotten across. And we would like to thank Ray in particular. We'd like to thank the library also for showing this display. It's been very popular. I have a feeling it'll come back again. So if it does, don't miss it. It's here now until the 24th of April. Been here a month, nearly 2 months. So thank you. I think it's important that we take a minute to tell you that this project is ongoing. I personally would like to have a project like this for North Westport, maybe certain areas if that was feasible. But for this project, we'd like to thank the descendants of people who came here earlier, local people, people who've just moved here. I could be considered one of them, although it's 25 years. So you can see the list. Edith Camara, Richie Earle, Mark Chardon, Gay Gillespie, Susan Carter Peck, Meredith Leach, Susan Montgomery, Jenny O'Neill, Sharon Raposa, Amy Sanders, Ray Shaw, and Betty Slade. And I'd like to say that I've kept mentioning the Westport Historical Society, but we also have a grant from the Westport Cultural Council, and we thank them very much.